Bonjour, welcome back to my channel. For those who do not know me, my name is Adriel. I am an American in Paris, and today we are going to be discussing something that I receive questions on constantly, and that is what it is like to be an African American in Paris. Now, I want to give just a quick disclaimer. I am an American, right? Like, my parents were born in America, my grandparents were born in America, their parents were born in America, their parents were born like, it goes back. I say that because every single time I ever kind of talk about an experience being a Black American woman in Paris, I inevitably receive comments that say, that's not what it's like if you're African or French African. I understand that, my loves. That is not me. I cannot speak to that reality, so I'm speaking to my reality. I also want to note that I am probably a bit privileged also in my position as an American, right? I moved here as an attorney. I didn't have to work, so I was able to take time off. And so I did also move here from that place. So that allowed me to kind of just like wander around the city and like live life kind of pretty relatively chill, for lack of a better word, and not frankly have to work in a French work environment. And now I'm starting my own business, and so again, I'm not really going to be working in a French work environment. So I do want to note that that's something that's going to be probably affect some of my perspective. And last thing I want to note that's definitely going to affect my perspective is I moved here during COVID. So it was me, the other expats who were already here, and the French people, and that was it. So it was actually a really great time to be in Paris, and I learned a lot about French culture and French society while I was here, while I was kind of here as part of COVID. I also have, a French boyfriend, and it's just like that is a whole new kind of cultural awakening. And then I have quite a few French friends, and so I also have, kind of their perspectives as well. So that is what kind of my life is like, and kind of what are some of the things that are probably going to be relevant when I talk about my experiences living here in France and just what that's been like. So with that said, let me share on exactly kind of my thoughts on what it is like to live in France. If I had to put it into one sentence, what life is like living here in France as an African American woman, I would say that it's perfect. It's like heaven. For me, okay, because here in France, I don't have to deal with racism. One of the things I think is very interesting about US society is that US society is very focused on always kind of like classifying you, like putting you in a box, right? So in the US, I was a lawyer. That's how, one of the ways you define me. I was an African American woman. That's one of the ways you define me. I was a woman. I was African American, right? Like, each of those are two separate ways of defining me. There are all of these, we're very focused on the US, I would say, as far as categorizing people and putting them in boxes. And one of the things that one of my French friends said is that she went to a small school in Illinois for a while she was in university, and she said, I had no idea how aware I was that I was white until I was living in the US. She goes, you all are just obsessed with always, putting down what your race is. Like, you're always asking it. And that's something that just doesn't exist really in French society, and frankly, and in Europe, like around the world, it's less about race and more about your origin. So it's more about where you're from. So because I am from America, and because there are so many Black Americans, who have contributed positively to French history and culture, Josephine Baker, James Baldwin. As a result of that, I get to live in privilege and benefit off of all of that. So as a result, I get to live from the basis of I'm an American, so I'm frankly a privileged a privileged immigrant. For lack of a better way of saying it, I get to exist in a privilege here that I don't have in the US. Like, I had no privilege in the US. You have no privilege when you are an African American woman. None. Zero. And it's interesting now to live life with privilege because, like, for example, when I have to go to the prefecture and I'm in the line dealing with their foolishness of whatever's happening in the line, inevitably there will be someone who's there and they're like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, I'm an American. And they say, and you have to do this too? It's like, yeah, honey, we all got to do it. It's a system of equality, miserable for all. But I just say that to say that that's an example of like the American privilege that we are viewed as having in comparison to other immigrants. And so I get to live in France every single day on the benefit of that privilege. And I love it. I'm not even gonna lie. After spending a whole life someplace where I felt like I was invisible, to be someplace where I have privilege, I'm sorry, but I love it. I do. It makes your life easier. I like it. It's so much fun. It's so great. And that doesn't mean that I'm not empathetic with all the other, I know that this experience is not like this for, other immigrants. I'm not oblivious as to how the world works. But do I love the fact that I finally, for the first time in my life, get to live a life of privilege? Heck yeah, I do. I like it. It's fun. It's great. Done. Xoxo. Another privilege I would say that I also want to note. So a lot of times when people look at me, it's like a guessing game of like what country I'm from. For some reason, Spain is always the first. I don't know why. I went to Barcelona last year. They don't look like me. Maybe I missed something, but the Spaniards, in my opinion, we don't look alike. Whatever, fine. But that is something, one of the first countries that I always get. So I do have a slightly different experience based upon just kind of the lightness of my skin. I know that, for example, when I am traveling with my brother, who is darker skinned than I am, he has a slightly different experience, but then the moment he opens his mouth, you start speaking with that crisp American English, they know that you're American, and you can watch the person that you're interacting with, you can watch their whole interaction with you. It just changes because all of a sudden now you're American. When you're dating, I talked about this before in a prior video, dating in France, you feel desirable, right? Like for the first time in my life, I feel like very much desired. In America, you can feel so undesirable as an African American woman, and I never feel that here, and it's just so nice. It's so lovely. You see it just kind of in everything when you're interacting with commerçants, just regular shopkeepers, like, oh, I'm American, like you're interacting, you can see how your interactions change. Now, with that said, have I encountered racism in France? Yes, I have. I deal with more crap when my hair is curly than when it is straight. Okay. And the thing though is that as my hair gets longer and longer, when it's curly, it's longer and longer. And I'm really great now with the styling product. So it looks really cool. And so as my hair is getting longer, actually, interestingly enough, deal with less foolishness when it's in its curly state, the longer it gets. But I do deal with kind of more, it's like almost passive aggressiveness, I would say, when my hair is curly and natural than when it is not. Like, it's never outright someone says anything. It's just someone will do something and you know that they're doing it to you because you're brown. And when I have those instances, I always speak in English. And then there's, and again, on the face, automatic shift. Like, oh, oh, désolé, pardon. You know, like it's all of a sudden it's a shift, right? You can see that. Second group of people that I have experienced, actually, frankly, most of the kind of more racist incidents that I've dealt with in France are from other immigrants. Yeah, they're not so nice always. It's like, hey, aren't we supposed to all be on the same side here? No, we're not. Yeah, I don't really want to go into those too much because I don't think that it is particularly helpful, and there are certain discussions I think that are frankly just better to have one-on-one. But I will say that when I have had incidents where I feel very clearly like someone is discriminating against me because of my skin color, or someone says something to me and it is definitely offensive, it has always been from other immigrants. Very often, and when I say very often, I also mean always from brown immigrants. And I will leave it at that. So I think that is something that I find incredibly, incredibly fascinating. African American culture, you know, we're very much like united in many ways. We do have a certain solidarity that really does exist culturally in many ways. And I would say that you don't really, because it's more about origin and the country you come from, you don't see that amongst, you know, different, you know, groups of people, other immigrants, I would say here. So I always find that really interesting, is that there's not that much like that camaraderie that I'm used to. I can't really expect it. So it's always been just a little bit like off-putting for me when I deal with an issue and the person who is acting the most crazy with me is someone who is also like brown. I'm like, are we really doing this today? Okay, if we're all gonna get crazy, let's get crazy, right? But in those moments you're like, really? Why? So yeah, I would say that that's something that I've found very interesting since being here. I don't know how much more I can really say on the topic and really share on the topic, because as I said, for me, it's really been more about just feeling this sense of just freedom. This freedom to not have to be in a box, not have to be categorized by something. The fact that when I am seen, I'm seen. Does that make sense? Like, I am not seen through all of these other filters, right? I'm seen, yes, through a filter, but it's a filter of a gigantic country, right? Like, it's like the filter of the American myth. Like that's the only filter I'm being perceived through. That's how people are seeing me. It's just that. And I don't know if I'm explaining it in the best way. I feel like this lens, like this filter that's been on the lens of me is finally off, and I get to just exist. I get to just be. Are there times when I travel around France and maybe I get some looks? Yeah. Sometimes, y'all, I will be frank, I will be looking distressed in this country. Particularly in the summer when there's no AC, I'm like very confused. I'm just like the little person like walking back and forth over the same place. Like, is that open? Is it not open? You know, I will get some looks. I'm sure part of that is due to whatever strange behavior I am exhibiting in the moment. But do I also think sometimes part of that is related to, like, who is this little brown girl in this town where there are no brown people? Yeah, I end up in lots of random small French villages. I don't know why. For some reason, I like to go through there. They have old things. I'm fascinated by their old castles and their old things. So yes, there are places where I go when I am probably the only, you know, brown person in like, you know, a 50-mile radius, right? And I will get some looks. But they're curious as to where I'm from, and then when they find out I'm American, again, it's always the shift. Like, it goes from being curious to just being almost like, oh my gosh, you're American. And that's why I want to say that I think that the standing of America on the world stage really truly affects how we are perceived in other countries and kind of what our interactions are, because it's just so funny sometimes the conversations you end up having with people. There are lots of these very cultural moments that I think are interesting, but those are cultural moments. They're not race moments. Like, I really can't pinpoint. I've had 4 race moments in my 5 years in France. 4. And then, of course, the random, aggressions you'll get from somebody because my hair is curly, and then I start speaking them in English, and then they pull themselves together. But, like, I can say that I had a race moment multiple times a day, every single day that I lived in the U.S. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm sorry. I feel like this video is becoming a bit rambling, but it's just, I can't describe fully how free I feel. I feel so free. And I want everyone to feel this freedom. I've never felt free before. I can't even fully articulate it, but I've never felt free before. So for me, if I have to sum it all up, I love this. I love this life. I love this country. I love existing. It's just cool. Now, I do want to talk about some of the other countries that I visited in the EU, just so you can have like a sense. I know a lot of people say Italy, they have horrible experiences in Italy. So my first summer after confinement finally ended and they let us all out, but Americans still weren't allowed in Europe. I actually did a road trip through Italy with Juju. That road trip was unexpected, crazy, but still awesome. And we hit kind of all the big places, okay? I had a great time in Italy. Italians thought I was cool. They kept calling me pretty everywhere I went. I was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is great for my ego. So I have not had the negative experiences that I have heard. I've heard a lot of stories of Black Americans talk about how they've had bad experiences in Italy. I did not. I had a phenomenal time throughout all of Italy. And if anything, I would say that as a Black American, if you find yourself having a moment where you think it might be due to your race, I would say to kind of check that person, but not check them in terms of race. Just kind of be a bit more direct, like, are you getting attitude with me? Because why are you getting attitude with me? Because then you kind of call out that passive aggressiveness, and it should calm somebody down. I've of course been to Spain. I've visited Brussels. I've been to the Netherlands. Where else? Some other, I think, small countries. I don't remember. Of course, the UK plenty of times. As far as have I ever felt anything, not so much. Like, no. And most of these places I visited by myself, like I love to go on a good little Adriel adventure on her own. But I, again, didn't have negative experiences, race-related experiences in any of those countries. And again, that might be because, I don't look like, you look at me and you don't instantly know where I came from, right? As I mentioned, I am lighter skinned, and so as a result, people sometimes look at me and they're just like, where did this woman come from? But yeah, I hope I've answered the question. I'm worried I've been a bit rambly in the video, but it's because I can't. I have talked about in a lot of prior videos how I was a lawyer, how much I disliked that job, how oppressed and suppressed I felt, and when I feel free from all of that, right? I feel, encouraged. I feel uplifted. I feel like I'm finally moving towards some of my dreams and my goals that I've had for my life. And I feel in many ways like those things have been possible because of France and because I got out of the US and because I came to this other country. And is this other country perfect? No, by any means. It is not perfect. But is it perfect for me and just this evolution that I'm on? Yes. Has it given me peace? Yeah, I needed that peace. I couldn't do it in corporate America anymore with those men and how I was being treated and, you know, the arguments you're having about your compensation. And, you know, it was too much for me. I just couldn't take it psychologically. I was very overwhelmed. And so for me to finally kind of be on, in many ways, the other end of that, I am just very grateful to finally have this peace and this hope that I just didn't have. I just didn't have it for so long. And it's just wonderful for me, and it's freeing for me, and I'm excited. And so what is it like for me? It's wonderful. It's wonderful. My race isn't what people see. They see me. And I feel like I just get to be free. So yeah, there's that. Let me know if you need a follow-up with more specific, questions that you might have. As I said, I don't think I fully know how to describe this. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching. Take care, stay safe, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.